I'm falling, I'm falling, I'm falling, I'm falling, I'm falling. Shouldn't be trusting me, I could be making it all up, you know. Out of control, you don't know me. I'm a danger to myself.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time it is that you are tuning in. This is Unapologetically Me, featuring me. No special guest, just me. So we're moving on to part 4 of Nikolas Cruz, the making of a monster, policies, all of that created this catastrophe, in my opinion, but also quite frankly, and I think I'm doing a decent job of showing you guys where I'm getting all of this information from and why I feel the way that I feel. The system failed. They failed big time. They failed with Nikolas Cruz, and because of that, they ended up failing 17 individuals. Right now, Nikolas Cruz is in court as we speak at this very moment. Today was the first day, or is the first day, of the penalty phase that Nikolas Cruz is facing. It is a death penalty case. So right now, they will be presenting all evidence and deciding whether or not to give Nikolas Cruz the death penalty or life in prison. And we will definitely get more into that. I have been watching it, and they're on lunch now, and so I'm going to make some of these videos. I had a tooth pulled and had some dental work done, and that's what's been taking me so long. But you don't care about that. You care about what I have to say about the topic. So let's get right into that. Welcome to anyone who is new here, and thank you to anyone who has already subscribed and continues to come back. I understand that I'm focusing a lot on one case. It is not something that I usually do, but being that it is current and being that I have kids in the public school system, I really felt strongly about this, and I feel very strongly in letting other people know the truth of what is going on in our schools and why our youth is exhibiting these types of behavior. So let's get to it. When we left off, I talked about the Baker Act and how a number of people could have invoked this and gotten him into some psychiatric institution to where he could be fully evaluated. It is clear to everyone at this point that there is something serious going on. This is not ADHD. This is, not just a behavioral disorder. There is something else going on here. It took until February of 2014, 5 months after Westglades began their evaluation process, and 1 year after his misbehavior became so severe that he was suspended essentially every other day, to send Cruz to Cross Creek. He eventually does make it back there. Even Cruz couldn't understand why the school kept him there for so long. He made comments to people all the time. Why am I still here? This probably seems like negligence of the school district, but it was just a matter of following policy. Even though everyone knew that Nikolas Cruz did not belong in Westglades, there was a checklist type process that was established by the district that had to be gone through. The people at Westglades, for the most part, did what they could with the resources that they had available to them and the constraints that they had. Ultimately, the school facilitates the process that is set by the district. The district makes the rules, the school follows the rules. While some of these policies were federal law, nothing in federal law requires this full checklist that Broward County had. In a sense, the district made the process of getting these kids into special education centers so much work that school administrators didn't even bother doing it. That's not federal law. That's just local policy. What is the motive behind these extremist policies that only Broward County was utilizing? A man by the name of Tim Sternberg, who once worked at Whispering Pines, a specialized school in Broward County similar to Cross Creek, said that 8 or 9 out of every 10 recommendations to transfer a student to that special school were rejected. Some believe the impetus for making these transfers more difficult was a desire to save money. Always boils down to money, doesn't it? Especially when we're talking federal government. It's far more expensive for a school district to serve a student like Cruz in a specialized school than in a traditional school. It seems that school districts systematically underserved emotionally disturbed students in order to save money. And that is because social justice activist groups frame this issue as a black and white question of civil rights. Putting students like Cruz in schools like Cross Creek is alleged to be discrimination. Keeping them in school like Westglades is a virtuous practice of inclusion. And if you guys don't know about inclusion policies, I mean, we're basically talking about it right now. The policies made it to be almost like it was discriminatory to put him in the specialized school, and inclusion was a big deal, making sure that students were able to get the same type of education as any other student, despite the fact that they may not be able to handle it. I think that's just so ass backwards. If a student's struggling and there's a specialized school that was created to deal with those types of struggles, to get these kids through school to be somewhat successful, if at all possible, then why wouldn't they go there? Why wouldn't they? I don't understand what's discrimination about getting a child help. That's just me. And this was to the point where when Westglades heard that Nikolas Cruz committed the massacre at MSD, some couldn't even believe it. They weren't surprised that Nikolas Cruz had done something like that. Because they knew he was screwed up. What surprised them was that he was able to do this at Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School, a public high school, a regular, normal high school. Because when they thought about it, why was he ever even allowed to be mainstreamed? Westglades educators recalled, "We did our jobs. It took forever, but we got him where he needed to go. We couldn't believe they ever let him into MSD." Back to present time, technically what I was just talking about. Cruz is now at Cross Creek, which is one of the 3 specialized schools in Broward County for students with extreme behavioral disabilities. These kids cannot function in a normal school setting. They cannot. It serves about 150 students in grades K through 12, most of whom have been diagnosed with mental illness and take psychotropic medication. It has a 2-to-1 student-adult ratio, as opposed to Broward's ESE ratio of students to staff, which was 19-to-1. It's clear, Cross Creek's ratio included 11 counselors, 15 behavior technicians, and 3 therapists. So these kids are getting counseling, they're getting therapy, and they have professionals in behavior that are helping them basically transform their behavior, which they're not getting. I mean, a ratio of 19-to-1 is just crazy to me. There was no question about this is where Nikolas Cruz needed to be. So how was he sent back to normal school? How did he end up a student at Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School when it's clear they did not have the resources there to handle a kid like Nikolas Cruz? His first semester at Cross Creek, he exhibited pretty much the same troubling behavior that he had at Westglades. His psychiatrist had noted he goes to YouTube, he researches wars, military material, and terrorist attacks. He wears military-related items. His parents stated that all these ideas were related to his excessive gaming. Cruz had shared with his school therapist about a dream that he had of killing people and being covered in their blood. By May of that year, Cruz's consistently disturbing comments made staff fear that he would harm others. So they developed a safety plan for him and recommended that his mother remove all sharp objects from his home. While doing a writing assignment about describing a perfect summer, Cruz wrote, "Buying some type of gun and shooting at targets that I set up with large amounts of ammo, just for fun, for hours." This sparked staff of Cross Creek to take the extremely unusual step of writing to his private psychiatrist, questioning what would happen over the summer when they weren't there monitoring him daily. Over the summer, he's at home with mom, brother, and no real structure. And that concerned them. And it was not usual for the school to contact a private psychiatrist regarding these issues. Most of the kids that they handled, they felt comfortable having them over the summer break, not being in the school. But they did not feel comfortable with Nikolas Cruz not having any type of structure. And they wrote the psychiatrist about that. Now, I'm not going to read you the entire letter that was sent. I'm just going to tell you what it expressed, which were many concerns about him being potentially dangerous to other people, oppositionally defiant, and very destructive. And of course, his strong obsession with guns and military, coupled with his poor anger control and aggressive behaviors, were a major, major concern, especially considering that he was trying to talk his mom into getting him a pellet gun. I don't know whatever came of that letter that was written to the psychiatrist, but we're moving on to October. Cruz appeared to have calmed down. His therapist's notes reflected that his disruptive behavior and destructive tendencies had decreased, and he expressed the desire to attend traditional school once again. Now, he didn't like Cross Creek. Obviously, what kid with behavior issues wants to be helicoptered? They want the freedom of being at a regular school so that they can get away with shit. He knew he could get away with shit at regular schools. They just didn't have the resources to constrain him the way he needed to be. Not only did he want to be mainstreamed, he wanted to join the JROTC program in preparation for a military career. His doctor did not advise this, but every member of his child's study team recommended that he be mainstreamed for 2 class periods a day at the beginning of the 2015-2016 school year. One for JROTC and another class to be determined. I don't understand how in the fuck, he could even qualify for JROTC program. I can guarantee you that the type of behavior that he has been displaying, no military would take him. It would be a liability for them. In fact, when they have people that display these types of things, even if it's PTSD related from being in the military, they have to discharge them. They cannot put a weapon in someone's hand that is mentally the way Nikolas Cruz is. And no military would feel comfortable giving that kid a weapon of any kind. Yet they put him in the JROTC program and essentially taught him how to use the AR-15 that he ended up bringing on that day and killing 17 people. Broward County School District, armed with all of the disturbing information that had been collected about Nikolas Cruz, not only allowed him back into regular school, but they armed him with a firearm similar to an AR-15, and they taught him how to use it. This all bears reiterating in order to emphasize the pure insanity of it. So, 1, okay? Cross Creek staff were well aware of Cruz's profoundly disturbing behavior at Westglades. 2, they knew about his obsession with guns and his dreams about killing people. And 3, they were so frightened that they took the extremely rare step of contacting his private psychiatrist. Not only did they return him to traditional high school at an unprecedented speed, this process usually takes about 3 years and several semesters of kind of gradually trickling them into more and more classes. They also enrolled him in the JROTC program, a course in which he would learn to shoot using an air gun that resembles an AR-15. Cruz's IEP update read that the decision was made that Cruz had proved that he could be a model student. Does he sound like a model student to you? I'm telling you all of this information. The school had all of this information. Does he sound like a model student to you, or anyone that you would give a gun to, even if it was an air gun? It was said that the therapist who wrote that letter had actually disagreed with the decision to mainstream him. So either she acted against her better judgment, or she was overruled by someone. Of course, it didn't help that Linda Cruz was pushing for him to be mainstreamed. It's really hard to believe that Cross Creek's decision to not only mainstream a student with a history of disturbing behavior and murderous ideation and an obsession with guns, but also to let him practice shooting with air guns as soon as he steps foot on a traditional school campus. It was simply an instance of negligence. The author of the book, Why Meadow Died, believes that this was either a conscious or subconscious response to explicit or implicit pressure to make Cross Creek appear orderly and successful. So, the fall of 2015, Nikolas Cruz entered Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School as a sophomore. He wasn't quite the same screaming terror that he had been at Westglades, but you didn't have to look very hard to see that he was a ticking time bomb. I don't want it to appear that every staff member involved in these schools was okay mainstreaming him. They were not. Many of the teachers, counselors, therapists who worked with him or had him in class with them, they did not agree that it was a good idea to send Nikolas Cruz to a normal school. According to district policies that were in place and all of this fine print, many of the warning signs that were listed about Cruz were not necessarily enough to prove that he wasn't ready to attend a normal school. And mainly that's because of how it was reported. Remember when we talked in the other video about him running into the street in a suicide attempt? They put that down as like a minor disruption, or, and it's like, so a lot of these things, were labeled as like profanity, or, it didn't sound as bad as what it actually was. So the IEP suggested that Cruz had shown some signs of progress. For example, he hadn't stolen anything while attending Cross Creek. He was very focused on making appropriate choices in both school and his neighborhood community. But there were also a lot of red flags, such as his lack of impulse control, needing to be monitored both in school and neighborhood communities, having poor judgment in social situations. So yeah, he's showing signs of progress, making appropriate choices in both the school and his neighborhood communities, but he's monitored while he's in school and neighborhood communities. So of course he's focused on making appropriate choices. There's literally someone there guiding him and suggesting the appropriate choice to make. To just put him alone out of nowhere when he's been getting all of this support, I don't know whoever would think that that would have been a good idea. Being mainstreamed, he wouldn't have anyone monitoring him anymore. And the fact that he has poor impulse control and poor judgment in social situations, I just don't understand it. Do you? I mean, he also used a lot of racial slurs towards peers, and he refused to accept that these comments that he made would cause another peer's reaction. So, an example, he got in a fight in school. He made some racial slurs to a kid, and that kid punched him. And when they talked about it in their healing circle, Nikolas Cruz did not understand that the reason the kid punched him was because he called him those racial slurs. Like he doesn't understand like relationship to anything. Most alarming of all were the entries by 3 different educators, teachers, about Cruz's fixation with guns and killings. Because usually when more than one educator writes the same thing on an IEP, it signals that it's very important. Unfortunately, nobody really read Cruz's IEP, and anyone that did and found issues with it and actually brought it to the attention of higher ups was told to, quote unquote, stay in their lane. Brushed off, ignored, basically made to either quit, leave from all the hostility that they would have to endure from arguing these policies and arguing that Nikolas Cruz should not be mainstreamed. But even those higher ups had read the IEP. His disciplinary history from Westglades would have not shown sexually lewd acts, stealing, a suicide attempt, or weapons possession. They would have only seen a couple of instances of vandalism, a couple of fights, and a lot of profanity and disruption. According to Cruz's teachers that first semester, Cruz was a quiet boy. On December 14, 2015, Cruz's IEP team decided to allow him to attend MSD full time. He had made progress in the intensive therapeutic setting of Cross Creek, where well-trained professionals would watch him like a hawk. But when he transitioned to MSD, his old behavior management plan was discontinued and no new plan was created. He goes from having all this structure and all this help, therapy, all of it, to nothing. Just a regular student attending high school. Teachers were left uninformed about who this student actually was, what to watch out for, and how to support him. They just basically threw him to the wolves. Cruz's first day as a full-time MSD student was January 11th of 2016. And less than 1 month later, February 5th of 2016, a woman called the Broward Sheriff's Office to report an Instagram post in which Cruz showed off a gun and wrote, "I'm going to get this gun and shoot up the school." The officer who responded to that call, Edward Eason, informed the woman that Cruz's Instagram post was protected by the First Amendment right of free speech. When the woman asked Eason whether there would be any way to prevent Cruz from buying a gun when he turned 18, the officer told her that his right to purchase a firearm was protected by the Second Amendment and that nothing could be done. Eason was wrong on both accounts. Threatening to shoot up a school is a felony that, if successfully prosecuted, could have prohibited Cruz from buying a firearm. Even if Cruz was not convicted, an arrest could have definitely gone a long way toward law enforcement taking future reports about Cruz seriously. But Eason failed to even write a report about the call. He did, however, according to his logs, notify MSD school resource officer Scott Peterson. It's not known whether Peterson ever informed MSD administrators of Cruz's Instagram threat. There is, however, cause to believe that Principal Ty Thompson and other administrators were aware, because 5 days after the woman called police about this Instagram post, Thompson emailed staff and parents saying, "Please advise, we received a report of a potential threat through the school district tip hotline today." School administrative and security staff followed all district safety protocols. School district police and local law enforcement were immediately notified. And this email was said to be related to a threat from Nikolas Cruz. But if so, school administrators didn't do a thing about it. Although it would have involved some paperwork, sending Cruz back to Cross Creek, it would not have been nearly as burdensome as sending him there in the first place. When a student with a deeply disturbed behavioral history threatens to shoot up the school, that is generally, to put it mildly, a sign that he is not well suited for that environment. Yet, no action was taken. The incident was not even added to Cruz's official records. On paper, Cruz appeared to have been a model student in the spring semester of 2016. Nikolas Cruz's official file bore zero relationship to reality. I'd say little relationship, but there was no relationship. I mean, his file made him look like all this, Cross Creek and all this intervention fixed him, when really it did nothing. It was working when he was there, so keep him there. Anytime they try to mainstream this kid, shit hits the fan. Campus security monitor, Andrew Medina, told police, "We were always watching Cruz. You know, he was one of those kids we always kept an eye on. You see him in the hallways, you see him out, call us up. Let's get him to the office." Now, I'm not done talking about Andrew Medina, so keep that in mind because we're going to talk about him again. Cruz often came to school dressed in full camouflage gear, mask included, and he would jump out from behind poles to scare other students. He brought dead animals to school. Sometimes he would fondle them under his desk to get reactions from the other students. Other times he put a dead bird or another animal inside of a lunchbox and he would give it to another student, telling them that there was a treat for them inside. Occasionally he'd throw food at students. He brought knives to school and offered to sell them to other students. He wrote, "I hate N-word" on his backpack, and he carved swastikas onto lunchroom tables. MSD staff recalled that he was sent to the office all the time, and students recalled that he was frequently suspended. All that being said, Cruz was only officially disciplined once that semester. It was a 2-day internal suspension for drawing swastikas on lunchroom tables, and it was labeled as profanity. So, we're going to wrap up this video, and we're going to go into part 5. I'll give you guys a little break here. Something you might find hard to believe that happened for Nikolas Cruz in March of 2016 is where we're going to pick up part 5. He began dating another student. Someone dated him, and that's where we're gonna leave off for today. A little cliffhanger for you. Please like, subscribe, share. I think this needs to get out. We are in the penalty phase of Nikolas Cruz, and I think that people have a right to know the truth about what really went on here in order to make a decision on whether or not he get the death penalty or whether or not he get life. I think people will have an opinion based off of this information. I certainly have some opinions, but I try to just give you guys what you need to make your own opinion and your own decisions. I mean, it's in a jury's hand, not mine or yours, but I think that in order to form an opinion about something, you need to know everything about it. So I'm trying to give that to you guys. So I hope you appreciate it, or at least get something out of it. We will move on eventually. I will be covering more cases in the future. This is just so important to me right now, and I feel like it should be important to any parent that has their kid in public schools right now, because these policies, they're just happening like crazy, and we need to do something about it. See you guys in the next video. Sorry for rambling, and talk to you later.
Oh, you don't know me. I am fading unfelt.
On December of student, sorry, there's flies. The officer who responded to that call was named